And without further ado, I'm really excited to all start panel together today. And this conversation is going to be a little different than a lot of cybersecurity talks that you may have heard in the video. So I just want to ask first, just to kind of figure out who are in the room area fight. Who would say they're a cybersecurity expert? Just by a show of hands. It's all right. Doing it. Your cybersecurity literate.
Breakfast.
Okay, a handful. All right. How many people know nothing about cybersecurity or very few? Okay, I'm one of them. How many of you would consider yourself a founder for business owners? Okay, perfect. Well, today we're going to be talking about cybersecurity in a very practical style. Can be sort of removing the jargon, sort of lifting the veil, and we're talking about it, in a really down-to-earth way. So there's no dumb questions. There's no guilt tripping if you're not cybersecurity literate. We're going to have a really candid conversation about what the current cybersecurity landscape looks like and how small business owners or entrepreneurs can set themselves up for good cybersecurity and hygiene. So without further ado, I am so excited to introduce the man on this slide. First up, I'm going to Ridhi, Heather Brinton. She is a cybersecurity analyst at St. Luke's Health System. She's bringing the regulated big organization lens to this conversation and has a wealth of background experience that I just learned chatting with her. Next up, we have Erin Brinton. He's the Chief Operating Officer at Revival Data Security. He's got 30 years in tech leadership experience and actually started his career in the U.S. Navy nuclear engineers. That's pretty cool. I'm sure that's a very secure environment. Now he's focused on making AI and cybersecurity accessible for small and mid-sized businesses. Last but not least, we have Ridhi, Tatineni, founder and CEO of Cello Software Lab. She builds products. She builds products, leads a small but growing team here in Boise, and she knows firsthand the speed and the strains of this startup operations. Welcome, you guys. Let's hear it for our panel. Okay, so this first segment, I thought it'd be good for us to kick this panel discussion off by just sort of setting the foundation. What does the world of cyber look like from each of your perspectives today? And how can we kind of deconstruct this myth that small businesses is too small to worry about cyber? Yes. With AI and tech innovation, the landscape of cybersecurity is changing. So I'm just curious to know a little bit more about each of you, how you function in your roles, the organization, and what the current landscape of cybersecurity looks like. How will we start with Heather?
Okay, sure. I think as long as if you have a computer, be worried about cybersecurity. And so that's
the key is
and look at it. I guess at this point, right? Not as small business is not at risk. They're probably not at risk from like that advanced threats, but that's what we're worried about here. They're maybe considered low-hanging fruit for sure, but that's also problems when it's downright very targeted from all other places. Companies setting places that are just sending out random, like emails. A lot of phishing. Sweet. So we have really be here. Also, not all those things. Trying selfless version means that.
But you
send them free text socials.
come go up
Go on. Somebody did it. Well, I've been all over the place. I got some up to it. Originally worked in DevOps.
There's no experience.
I was saying. Yeah, I think phrase me was out and then moved into a cybersecurity role. I was a cybersecurity architect. Yeah, share and stuff.
Completely able
to start in that security awareness program.
So just like show.
That was also like some very well but kind of a little bit of everything. But now it ends up your perspective, and that is a completely different see giants from God used to listening to it. Hi everyone, I'm Ridhi, and make recently I came into this whole world being somebody who was interested in data analysis in 2019, I was like, let me go tap into that. I was deciding, okay, what lab program do I do, right? Eventually landed in software engineering, and I always had an eye for design. It's like, how do I mix both of them? And then I realized there's something called product management. So that's kind of how I went along. My former colleague is here too, so shout out for him too. He's like, hi. He's like, yeah. Anyway, so it's very different when I started out initially when in a big company. The security measures there were extremely tight. I was in a startup that was being incubated by Micron, and as you know, Micron, big giant. We had to, run ML pipelines in encrypted data with encrypted data. I don't know how it's possible to do that, but we did it, and yeah, we somehow went past it. Then I started Chalo, and I realized, okay, tech people can, build software, but there's not a lot of people who are non-tech who are comfortable with it. So I decided, okay, let me create a lab that makes tech accessible for non-tech business owners because they're just too afraid of changing their business in the back end. And the way I see it from a small business perspective for cybersecurity is they don't know what kind of attack they're even prone to. It could be as simple as a reCAPTCHA. There's a small website that I built, and I got 80 bot emails on a Webflow website, all in Russian. I don't know what. Like, when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not good. Like, I was able to catch that. Small business won't be able to. Again, coming to MFAs, people really underestimate multi-factor authentication. And the last thing is, I think, passwords. Don't share your passwords. There's better ways to do it. A new tool that I found is called LastPass. It kind of authenticates and secures your passwords in Hackfort, so it's easy to share. So, sorry, please talk.
All right. So my name is Aaron. I have been doing technology stuff for a very long time, and either I'm indecisive or I just have a lot of experience. But I started out, like I said, as a nuclear engineer, and then I went into IT, and then from IT to software engineering, and then from software engineering, I ended up in cybersecurity. Mostly because while I was working with emerging technology research and development for the intelligence community, and in order to get software deployed into a classified environment, you have to go through a pretty hefty cybersecurity process. So somebody else wanted to do it. I ended up doing a lot of cybersecurity stuff, and that led me down the path of me focus on that. And one of the things that's interesting about cybersecurity that is very different from every other technology field is that when you have all the emerging technologies, whether it's spatial computing, whether it's AI, whether it's cloud computing type of stuff, you have all these new things come out. There's this big hype around it for a while, and then it drops off with the actual value proposition is. Well, so you have people that all go all in on that technology. That's what they become good at. With cybersecurity, every single one of these new emerging technologies just expands the amount of work that we have to do, the amount of stuff that we have to know. And so it's an industry where you kind of have to know quite a bit about everything. And you're always having to learn and always having to adapt. You're always having to basically learn what everybody else gets to learn and forget. You have to keep, because what has happened is the threat landscape has increased. So that's one of the things that I actually really like about the industry. It's also what makes it very hard for, I think, a lot of people. So, carrying on talking about the individual, these different threats and stuff, I don't spend a lot of time doing that in my current job. Most of my stuff is in governance, risk, and compliance. So it's risk management. It's about dealing with compliance for regulatory issues and whatnot. So it's more at the board level or the C-suites of trying to manage your cybersecurity program as a whole. And then we're, I guess, tracking and reporting on all these different things that are being done in IT and the actual cybersecurity teams.
So we've learned a little bit more about your backgrounds. I think we've got a really great composition here. A lot of experience, a lot of different perspectives. I'm curious to know today, whether it's in the healthcare world working with small teams that function much like small business teams, or working with startup founders as you're building their products, working in that C-suite level, what are like 2 or 3 common mistakes you see small businesses, early stage founders, or small companies making in the age of AI when it comes to cybersecurity?
Unfortunately, it's still business email compromise.
That's the one.
All the time. Still the one.
The classic, hi, intern, it's me, CEO. Send me a gift card.
I actually had with my previous CEO, and an employee was like, "Why is the CEO asking me for money?" And he immediately reached out to my CEO saying, "Is this you?" And then he was like, "Why would it be me? Okay, thank you so much for knowing enough about me to think it's not me." CEO.
Well, I can imagine too that approach with scammers has become more complex. I mean, AI can mimic the voice of somebody if there's enough video of them on the internet speaking. So I mean that very common Trojan horse scam system is being redeveloped. So are you seeing that with the teams that you're working with at Cybersecurity still?
It's still mostly having an email scale, but I think that will be happening on like other scales, and that's the future of what we're looking at. So we're preparing for that.
Ooh. And then coming from the top down, like with the C-suite, what kinds of conversations are you having around how your employees are engaging with security hygiene?
So I think the bigger question is, because it's not just the C-suite, but it's founders, individuals, even you recall. One of the things I think people get distracted by is they get a little bit distracted by what we do, like these measures they need to take. And what they really need to start with is what is they're actually trying to protect, and then work down to figure out like what is it that I'm trying to protect? What happens if I get compromised? Because if I have my directory of files that all have stuff that I posted on the internet, I couldn't care less if it's compromised. And so what ends up happening is people spend a lot of time and resources in business that do this at a very large scale, where they'll spend an enormous amount of money developing a cybersecurity program or doing a compliance framework that is not scaled well for what they're actually trying to protect. So that's good. And so the first thing is you need to figure out what you're trying to protect, figure out your risk management for it, if something does happen, what is it that you're losing? Because that will tell you what your tolerance is for that risk.
That makes a lot of sense. Ridhi, I'm curious, as you're building your company right now, how are you integrating cybersecurity into your practice?
Okay. So a couple of things, a couple of mistakes, we've all made. One thing is definitely the password protection. Another big thing that I see with engineers, especially knowledge engineers, is that they put API keys and a lot of encryption, like a lot of, important information in code. They're actually supposed to be stored away in some environment variables. People don't know that I made that mistake when I first started coding. So that's one thing. What I want to do is, for all the startups that I am going to start working with, make them at least like SOC 2 compliant, even if they're not, even if it's not for an enterprise that they're working for. I think people just want to be protected. So I found this cool tool. It's called Vanta. I think they just opened it. So I think they just started it. It apparently reduces your SOC 2 compliance time from like 6 to 12 months to like a few weeks. I think they have a couple of processes already laid down for startups to get that quicker. So that for startups specifically, coding related, keep your environment variables safe. Keep your GitHub repositories locked so that all your variables are stored away. And phishing, like you were saying. So know that first, like security is like the first thing that you have to kind of lock up as soon as you start, like even as a small business owner. Because as you're growing, you're not going to realize that your passwords are still compromised. You're still sharing them with website developers, graphic designers, and sometimes, and I think I heard this, the best hackers know that somebody uses the same password in different
platforms. So it's like get one, it's just a combination of that, and they can break it. I think LastPass is something that I really want to use as I grow. Even if somebody needs to share their passwords with me, that would speak what you would.
Is there anything else we should know about just the current landscape of cybersecurity? Perhaps maybe before we move on to the next segment of this panel discussion, what's one thing that either a small team operating or a founder in the early stages of their business, or maybe a more established company, what's something that people do that they may not realize is causing a cybersecurity issue or potential threat?
I think what she brought up is great.
Yeah.
Password reuse is still probably one of the worst things still happening. And so a vault of any kind, it is awesome because the best password is totally randomized. Any dictionary words, even the phrases that we were talking about in the past are not good enough. A completely randomized password at maximum length is probably the best thing to do. Because if you're using a vault, then you don't even know what it is anyway, so it might as well be as strong as it can possibly be.
Yeah, and most computers are actually recommending randomized passwords anyway. So instead of ignoring it, just accept it because that might be what's saving you.
So if I was founding a company right now, which I probably won't do for a little while, because after 8, I'm kind of burnt down on it. You can only fail so many times. Anyway, so if I was going to start right now, probably one of the core things I would be doing is I'd be identifying my information assets, and I'd have a cyber awareness campaign of some sort to make sure that everybody who's working with my data, working for me, knows what we're protecting, why we're protecting it, and importance of what the consequences of breach. And I want everybody else to say, not to downplay like these individual controls. I mean, these are all part of it. But I mean, I think cyber hygiene is something that every employee needs to know, and that comes through training and repetition, saying over and over and over again, don't reuse your passwords. Use a password manager. Use multi-factor authentication. There's just don't click links in email. Even if it's from somebody you think you trust, just don't click links in email. In fact, just don't use email. Pick up your phone. I mean, or better yet, just walk down to because these days you get a video and it's AI. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, just the basic cyber hygiene, don't trust anyone. That'll be one part of it. And then the other part would be, you'll be resilient. Be prepared to handle bad events when they happen. Have a savings account. Don't over leverage. I mean, this is basic stuff. I think that having that security and safety mindset is fundamental.
I think I definitely agree with what you're saying, Aaron, because people when they're coming into the industry, especially when they're like interns graduating, they don't know about all these risks. Even if they're so small and minor, they don't realize that it becomes a big issue once they're in somebody else's, or once they're working for somebody else's business, because there's like money associated with it. So like I feel like trainings are super important. I think the tool that I was talking about, it's called Vanta, right? Even there, they say training. Like irrespective of how many tools you use, it comes back to the hygiene of the person, and there are just some things that you can control as a human,
Yes. Yeah. So I think what we're talking about now is security as a culture, and that has to come from the top down, because everyone always says like security is everyone, but unless that actually is in action, then it's not a culture, it's a mandate, and no one likes to be told what to do.
Right.
That does not work.
I'm looking at the early stage startup, the founder perspective. It's the easiest time to start a culture is at the beginning. And when you act that way, you attract people that, subscribe to that same mindset. And you can train it from the beginning and have it grow with you rather than try and do it. I think you had said once the train has left the station, or you used the phrase that was like, once it's already moved away from cyber hygiene, it's really hard to bring it back.
It's hard to turn the ship around.
Turn the ship around. Yes. That's even more hard than trying to fly. Well, wonderful. Okay, so I feel like that gives us a pretty good idea of the risks that are out there. I'm wanting to kind of shift the conversation towards, what actually works, what helps, what sort of practices, as you're setting these cultures, like how do you recommend startup founders set up at the beginning? Whether it's these hygiene huddles or this culture you're talking about, I'm hoping to get a little granular. What are the specific topics of conversation or the key things that you discuss? Is it your website? Are there potential vulnerabilities there, really, like you mentioned with bots getting in? Right now we had a conversation at Boise Entrepreneur Week on search engine optimization in the age of AI. People are turning away from standard search engines like Google and so on, and they're moving towards using AI bots and ChatGPT to scrape the entire internet and bring them back a condensed summary. If your website isn't set up or optimized to be scraped by AI, you'll be missed out. You won't show up on that summary. But then again, opening up your site, allowing it to be scraped, probably comes with a potential security threat. So I'm just curious to know, when a founder's getting started, what are your sage pieces of wisdom that you think would really help set that culture of cyber hygiene?
I'll take the first step. So everyone always talks about shift left, and they usually mean that from like the development perspective. But you can shift left for people too, and culture. And when you're a startup, you really have a wonderful opportunity to do that with people. And I think you should begin cybersecurity from a perspective as early as you possibly can. I don't know why it's not included more in the hiring process or even when people are onboarded. Like, it should be really important at that point. And it's very transparent. This is important to our company, and this is the direction we're going.
Yeah. And is from your perspective, what are the control mechanisms? Like, when you look at that, what are the things that move the needle? Do you look at number of compromises? Do you look at how do you track that progress?
I'm secret.
What? Well, not necessarily. It's just knowing the people that you're hiring, like, how do they feel about security? And because if you're hiring people that feel very strongly about security as a whole, then that's going to help your organization. And then this isn't even what are we talking about? They would be great, right? Hopefully. And then when you bring in security at the forefront of all the projects, you don't have to talk about it yet. That's what shift left means. We're shifting from working at it at the end of a project to the beginning.
Yes.
I think I was fortunate that somebody that I worked with was very, very careful. I think he had experienced these kinds of things much early on in his career. So I think I learned a lot of cybersecurity hygiene from him. He was so the kind of learnings that I have. Make sure that you're inviting people from their own email address to anything, whether it's GitHub, whether it's a website, like Webflow, WordPress. Do not give your password away. Instead, add them as a collaborator. It's so easy for us to just be like, it's $30 for an extra seat, but it could cost you thousands later on if that person walks away or if their email ID is compromised by somebody and you're just, or like if our email ID is compromised, right? It's easier to cut something off from an existing plan than figure out why it even went wrong in the first place. So keeping that very clean is a must have. Also, like, always keep yourself as an admin. If you're a business owner, you're the only admin there. And these are the things that I see startup founders experiencing, right? And another thing is if like bots, like you were talking about bots, right? Nowadays, I saw this on Webflow as I was editing my website the other day. I saw at the FAQ schema. So that's how these LLMs know that there's like FAQs on your website, things that could be answered so that it shows up in the AI search. But there's also a recapture and there's a security element, thankfully, that most of these platforms are coming up with because they know that these business owners, like Webflow, it's supposed to be as easy. So it's supposed to be so easy that anybody can go and like build a website, right? So big companies are also identifying that security has become a threat. That's why they're making it accessible, just like a toggle. So just look for that security component in whatever platform you're using.
And I'm just curious too, as you're working early stage startups, you're building out the products for them. What we talk with startups about the cost of your legal services, and that's something that startup founders usually go, I didn't plan for that. Cybersecurity is very similar. Like it's that thing that's kind of you have to pay for it after the fact, whereas if you pay for it up front, you save quite a bit. So I'm curious, do you recommend a certain percentage of that product budget as you're building maybe a website or an app or a product for a customer? Do you have like a prescribed cyber budget or focus?
Yeah, actually, some of the products that I'm building are way too early stage in the sense that they're almost like prototype level. So I'm trying to get to I'm trying to help non-tech founders at least figure out what their prototype is, right? So I think that early on you're still in the validation stage, but later on I would say at least I don't know percentage wise, but spend at least a couple of hours talking to some cybersecurity professional and figure out all the leaks you possibly have. If you're a coder, figure out where do a complete cleanup of your code. Because people, especially when they are early on, I made these mistakes, which is why I know, is that we just leave variables all over the place. We don't even remember where we left them. So at least take all of them, clean it up, find a good spot that's locked away, and that's something that I would truly recommend, because it's easy to jailbreak into code. Because you find it and then somebody deploys it.
Yeah.
So I feel like I already answered the question about what should founders do when they're starting. So forgive me, I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about for a minute.
Please do.
So one of the things about cybersecurity is, we talk about this stuff, but some of the things at the high level are just life skills. And this, when it comes to risk management, this is something that we all do every day with every decision we make. We decide whether we're going to accept the risk, whether we're going to mitigate it, whether we're going to ignore it, which isn't really one of the things you're supposed to do, but ignoring it is just say, I'm not going to deal with it. And, we get insurance. These are things that we just do in our lives. And they're really cool skills to understand and to know what we're doing. So the core risk management functions, those are cool life skills. And you realize when you're making any decision in life that these are cool things that you can know and learn. And you're actually learning one of the fundamental parts of cybersecurity. So everybody, I think that they should teach some of these fundamentals in grade school. Like how to ask questions, like according to whom, when somebody makes a claim, or epistemic type of questions, like how do we know things, how do we learn things, when you get something to be skeptical. These are just core life skills that are fundamental to being effective at cybersecurity. They're also just fundamental to being human. And I would love to see us encouraging more of our young people and students to learn those skills, not just for cybersecurity as a career path, but just for success in life.
That's called the scientific method.
It's pervasive.
That's that.
All right. That is a great segue, I think, into the next section. And we talked a little bit about, it's hard to avoid a conversation about AI when talking about cybersecurity today. It's changing the way data is being collected and processed and stored. It's really changing the depth of which we give ourselves to technology. It's so tempting nowadays to hop into ChatGPT, give it your data sheet, and have it run analytics for you instead of using Power BI and doing it the old way. I'm curious to know, you had said something, Aaron, about all of these tools that pop up, they create new challenges for cybersecurity professionals. And yes, there's the flagship AI companies and models like Anthropic and OpenAI and ChatGPT, Google's Gemini. But AI is now being added into virtually every tool we use in the professional world, whether it's our CRM systems, whether it's communication platforms like Slack, or simply our document word processors like Google Docs. It's everywhere. So as these new tools make us more effective and productive, specifically that early stage founder when resources are really limited, how can you use the shiny new objects and still protect yourself? I mean, I'm trying to avoid asking you for more tools about how to evaluate, but I'm guessing what I'm getting at is with these new AI tools, there's such value to be added. What is the potential trade-off as people use AI specifically?
So I'll just jump in on this one since I've been working with AI for over 15 years now, and some of that with generative AI. And I'll say, security doesn't change based on what the technology is. When we're talking about and a lot of the reason why I'm so focused on the fundamentals of cyber hygiene and thinking critically about content is because with how much ChatGPT and these other generative AI solution platforms, how open and how available they are, it makes it so easy for us to make bad judgment calls with data. And so it magnifies the importance of understanding the fundamentals and knowing what it is that you're putting into these systems.
A lot of which, too, I'm curious to know your perspective on this. Like with ChatGPT, you can say, don't use my data to train your models. Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Is that just bullshit, or is that actually...
Okay, so if you look at history, and forgive me, I'm bitter. I love technology. But the fact is, these big tech companies break the law until they get caught, and then they try to retroactively get the laws changed. And now I will tell you, just philosophically, I'm not a big fan of intellectual property, but intellectual property is the law, so we should all have to follow it. All of us should be held accountable for it. And forgive me. I'm diddling soapbox here. I'm a little peeved in the industry right now.
Let us hear it.
Yeah.
Anyway, and now they're tranching. Investors are tranching, just like they did in the 2000s. So with the housing crisis. So we'll see what happens. So yeah. Anyway, except for these aren't houses. These are a bunch of GPUs that won't hold their value for a couple of years. Anyway, if you're an investor, get your cash out.
So I guess you are frustrated with the industry, right? So with that, how would you, I guess, protect yourself even more?
So yeah, that's a good question. So resilience is, I always talk, you'll hear me, I'm very repetitive because I say the same stupid things over and over again. Be resilient, have a savings account, save money, don't spend more than you're earning. If you have a year if you live for a year without a job, it's amazing how much better decisions you make. And when something goes, when the shit's fan, okay, well, I have a few months to figure it out. So it's the same thing for businesses. Businesses just sit on your payroll if they can afford to. I know that's hard with startups, but if you could, through however much time you can sit and have the ability to recover, do that. Have savings. Be conservative. Don't over leverage. Don't go into massive amounts of debts. When you do, don't. I also have problems with VC, but we'll get to that conversation later. But if you get investment capital, know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Don't go and get massive amounts of debts. These are all things that make you less resilient. And when the market goes up and down, because it does, those who are resilient will be the ones who are around it for years.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think right now is the time to be extremely frugal, just because where everything is. But thankfully, this is something. Again, I have some frustrations too. I'll just pass it on to you.
You don't want to get into your frustrations. I feel like they'll reveal a lot of maybe what everybody's.
No, it's okay. Some people oh my gosh, AI, wow. But it has its own issues, right? And some people think, oh my gosh, this thing is thinking exactly what I'm thinking. But I'm okay, it's just patterns, It's just patterns. It's just read the same thing over and over again, and it's just deciding what could possibly be the next word. That's literally it. And I say this because there was a point in 2019 where everything was just natural language processing. What did it have? A bag of words. What does it do? Predict the next thing with probability. I think if you just break it down to that level, you're like, okay, it's just a thing. Doesn't have a mind. So I feel like just the word AI is also so hyped that can just like kind of bring it down. Because look behind the curtain, it's just math. Anyway, that was a random tangent. So back to your Jacob.
Heather, do you want to add anything? We've got.
I agree that it's a little overhyped, but what it is really good at is making phishing emails. So that's what we need to be prepared for. So, gone are the days of the misspellings and they're really good. So,
Almost like you have to make a mistake now. It's so legit.
Again, don't use email. Don't take it too seriously.
I'll tell my boss that. Cybersecurity expert said I should not use email. I'm sorry. You'll have 10 meetings now.
Or computers.
Email's dirty and the internet is also dirty.
Okay. So, in an ideal world, we would not use computers or Gmail. And that's my ideal. We don't live in that world, and these security risks are bound to actuate into real issues, real costly issues. If I'm an early stage founder and I'm seeing that my data has been compromised, whether it's minimal or it's extreme, what do I do? What do I do in that world? Or in that scenario where I realize that, perhaps my inaction or negligence has led to a potentially very costly cyber mistake. What's your advice on how I would correct that?
Depends on what level of you. Early stage, you kind of have some control over it. I've seen some organizations, like I worked at Run for a bit. Oh my gosh, nothing can get through that. Like, I had to text somebody to get me authenticated into something else, into a database. And it's a good question. I'm going to think about that, Jacob, because as a growth stage startup, like, how can you potentially protect yourself with the limited cash that you have? And how can you, obviously a consultant is very expensive. Every dollar needs to be accounted for. So like, what's a good middle ground? And I think like Fanta, I think that's why somebody noticed that gap. What would you say?
And then like, this is why you need an incident response plan.
Yeah.
And
What
a
does that-
business continuity plan.
Okay, so what does that mean? Like, this is
Let's break it down. Let's break it down for the early stage founder in the audience. What's an incident response plan?
Literally just lined out all the steps what to do. You plan it in advance so that when you get into trouble, in a panic mode, you just follow along the steps. I contact this person, I do this thing, this is what I need to do. And because you spend that time ahead of time, because when you're in a panic, that's not what you want to do. It can be very not even complicated. It's like these people like, oh, this is what I need to do, because that's not the last thing you want to do when you're in the pain point.
Probably there's a lot of potential to make it exponentially worse, I think, in that situation. Like, once you detect the threat, if you don't respond correctly, you could potentially expedite the harm.
Well, if you don't have a plan, if you haven't thought about it in advance, no response you have is going to be good. The only response you really have is to learn from it for next time.
Yeah.
So speaking of incident response plans and business continuity plans, those are kind of fundamental things that, like, even as a founder, you should have some idea of how you, business continuity is just about a breach. That's about if there's a natural disaster, if your server overheats and melts down, that's going to include if this happens, how do I handle it? And so the incident response plan is an important part of it's just part of the business continuity, your business continuity mindset. And a lot of it is just thinking through some circumstances in advance. And again, this goes back to your risk management, and if you can, quantitative instead of qualitative risk management. If anybody wants to explain that, I can. But being able to go and know what you're trying to protect, what happens if you have a breach for it, as what are some of the potential threats, because there's always going to be threats. You're not going to know what they all are, but you can say, here's how we'll respond to whatever does that.
I have a question from a small business owner. What are some really good response plans that you think you had lined out in the past? Something that really worked versus something that didn't? Just from the experience that you had. Sorry, I'm just trying to learn from the best.
this is a little bit. And so you learn that like cybersecurity expertise comes from abysmal failures, just like founders learn from abysmal failures. That's how it works. So one of the things is that in your incident response plan, don't use your communication form that you use when you're in your normal business operations. Because have a call tree. Because if you're compromised, you don't have access to any of that. And so when you're sitting there going, well, the only phone number I know is my mom's cell number, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. So that's one of the key things. Like, make sure that whatever your plans are, that they're not in your normal business flow.
Out of bounds Slack channel. That's good. Sorry, try out of bounds Slack channel.
Okay. Right. So write things down. What's the best way to protect yourself if everything is online? See, I almost going to say that.
I think that's why I said call trees.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, we actually would have call trees where we would go and if something happens, we don't use anything online. We actually pick up the phone and we call. So you would call your direct reports, and they would call their direct reports, etc.
I mean, when a GitHub repo gets compromised, that's what we do. Like, we just cut down all emails who have access to that, and then just start from there again, kind of start fresh. But other than that, what would you do? I'm just curious as to how I would handle that. And that's
it's going to depend on your organization. It's going to depend on your people.
Okay.
Everything is these things. I mean, people try to use templates.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that when it comes down to it, it needs to be written for you, for your environments. You can't really say. I mean, you could here's what should be in it. Like, you can have a checklist of what should be in your business continuity plan or what should be in your incident response plan. But it's going to be you that needs to come up with what works for you. And then you test it to see if this is actually a process that works for us.
I would say that's a great opportunity for a table talk. You get all the people in a room, and you're like, let's talk about the worst things that could possibly happen, and what will we do when it's not actually happening. And then you plan for it.
Well, you guys, we started this panel discussion talking about what the current landscape of cybersecurity looks like and what small business owners and entrepreneurs can do to protect themselves. We've got some really good advice. Use a password vault, I think, was one that we discussed multiple times. Have an incident response plan. With your team, understand at the very beginning what it is that's worth protecting. That'll expose vulnerabilities. There were so many other bits of wisdom in there. Simple practices that you follow day in and day out that can help lead to a more secure small business or startup. I'm curious to know, we're right about at time, so I want to turn the microphone this direction and see if there are any lingering questions out in the crowd. If you have any questions for our speakers, just raise your hand and shout it out.
Okay, I like to just see it look up.
Yeah.
So, as a startup for at least, I talk about the security whole doesn't come in. Hey, the framework in the right things. How do you know what go to March? Then ship growing. Yeah, sure. I ain't about stuff. That's nothing. Each our sock. No,
I can't say.
I guess the question is, when do you get SOC 2 compliant?
When we start to this to make the right thing, right words, there's the right strategy, and that's talking to definitely.
So, in my opinion, I'm a GRC person, so to me, this is
more the
The question itself was, when do you move from the cybersecurity hygiene culture into when you're bringing your product to market and now you've got to do it for real? When do you make sure that your team is properly certified? When do you invest in the correct software? Is that okay?
Yeah, cost for.
When do you go through the actual certifications? When do you make that switch?
So that's right in my space. The fact of the matter is that until you're required to for a regulatory reason, you shouldn't. Now, you could use a framework. I mean, I'm all for using a framework, but going and getting the certification, it's a cost. It's very intrusive, and it's a pain in the ass. And so, I mean, if you have a market, either you're required for regulatory reasons, or your customers are requiring it, or if it can give you the ability to sell better or market better, then go for it. But for protecting yourself, you don't need any of those certifications. What you need to have you could use the frameworks as a guide, but you need to have good security hygiene.
Yeah, I'm in the store.
Jacob, I have one question.
Yeah, please.
So, sorry. I guess, do you really get your company SOC 2 compliant when you have an enterprise customer coming in, when you're expecting an enterprise customer? Because I know enterprise customers are the ones that really look for these regulations to be put in place. Or do you just wait? Because I know they're also very careful with the vendors they choose for their software.
They'll be to expect. Don't get feedback.
Huh? Yeah, I mean, that's actually a question that I had.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. If you're going after enterprise customers and you want to use it as part of your marketing, of saying, yes, we've got our SOC 2 Type 2, then yeah, do it.
Okay.
But if I mean, it's one of those things where I don't like premature optimizations, because I've made the mistake many times as a founder of going and spending a lot of time and money on things that really didn't end up mattering, that nobody actually cared about it in the end. And so for me, I mean, I would not bother with any of them until I had a real tangible requirement for it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's great.
I like reckless. If you're working in a large corporation that has a big cybersecurity infrastructure and no, my friend doesn't. What's the right amount of security versus typically enabled? How locked down do you need to be versus enabling your employees use tools and the internet to work?
So that is what risk management's all about.
So,
Yes. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
If you're working within a large corporation, how do you determine the balance between security compliance, safety, and encouraging and promoting innovation or the use of new tools?
Well said. So yeah.
I think that
So I mean, really, that's what risk management is for. Is that you determine, going back to what's at risk, and then you calculate so you have inherent risk, which is how much the risk is if you don't do anything, and you have residual risk, which is the risk amount. Just what is residual risk is what's left over after you've done some mitigation for that risk. So you have to evaluate what the cost is of those productivity changes.
Yeah.
This is all where you get into quantitative risk management. You say, well, what's the cost of me to implement a fix for this? What's the cost if I actually have a breach? Because it may be that you're willing to accept the risk of a breach in order to have productivity. It's the same reason why you use a computer. And in order to use email, even though Jacob's getting a compromise. So when we do those things, every single one of those things, we have to say, okay, do I have email? I want to have email. It's worth having email, even though it opens up this risk.
that's good. That's my follow-up. My corporation hypothetically say seems to be a state issue, things. Meanwhile,
It's terrible.
to me, it shows that it's all kind of theater, right? If the vulnerability is email, and yet I'm surrounded with these tools to do my job, and what is the point?
It is remarkably difficult in a large organization to balance these things, because especially healthcare, I will tell you, healthcare where nobody could prioritize anything, it's a huge challenge. And so this is, sorry. So
It's a rabbit hole.
It is really hard. And the thing is, like I was saying before about how, every new emerging technology expands the cybersecurity process, the threat landscape. It is an amazing amount of stuff that we have to deal with and we have to know. And so and it's also, nobody wants to do security. It's not fun. Not at all. It's really, building tools to do cybersecurity is pretty fun, but the actual security stuff itself kind of sucks. So it's hard to get people who are really interested and ambitious and doing stuff well and doing it right. A lot of it, you end up with a lot of people that are checking boxes. And so, and in large organizations, you have a higher, you have a higher sense of bureaucracy that is driving more of the box checking. So it's a cultural thing. But I mean, I don't think that there's really an answer except for you just do the best you can. And, all I would say for you is to do your best to be secure and do the best of your job with the limitations they put on you.
There's
Okay.
it's technical to business.
So, what are the common things that companies are trying to protect? Like off the top of my mind, I think it's function. I don't want to pay fungus invoice, data, just having, a ton, just
Things like that.
really this here. Can you expand that list to what just those things?
There's
Some kind of hard on the stage here. So
Good question.
what's that? Yes, for a day, right? So basically he's asking, what are the various types of things that we're trying to protect? And I mean, that's probably something, right? So we have these data classifications that we have. So in DoD, you have your class. I actually have classifications. You have secret, you have top secret, CI data. In the commercial space and in the more public space, you have PII, which is personally identified information and identifiable information, and PHI, personal health information. These are terms that you're probably somewhat familiar with because you are exposed to them. And so those are kind of these groups of data you're trying to protect. And a lot of times, what companies are trying to reduce is their liability more than the money is a big deal, but the liability is really what puts you out of business. In most of these cases, is if you have a breach and you did not do adequate controls, you now have this legal liability that could far exceed whatever the cost is of the actual data that you lost. And then you have reputation problems. So generally, a lot of times, what we're trying to protect is privacy and confidential information, like proprietary information, corporate trade secrets, things like that. But a lot of it, actually losing money is usually a fairly low risk, trivial type of thing, because it's usually, while it's big for individuals, it's usually pretty small for corporations. Every once in a while, somebody pulls off some multi-million-dollar heist, but for the most part, it's like $5K here, $10K there. But when you get a fine for $20 million because you didn't protect your customer health information, that's a much.
Yeah, it seems like cybersecurity is more about damage control. That's the. So
I can understand that perspective. It's damage control, but it's damage prevention.
Yeah.
So it's not just it's both. So ideally we prevent it, but it's impossible to prevent everything or to know everything could happen. So that's where really what risk is it's the inverse of luck. So it's just bad luck. Yeah. So I mean things happen.
And there is brand reputation, but that also comes down to money. So
Right.
Well,
you guys, that puts us right about at time. I just want to thank the panelists again, Heather, Ridhi, and Aaron. Thank you so much for making the time to come out and share your perspectives and your experiences. Let's hear it up. Give it up for our endless. Also, thank you to Sinead Raymond with the Hackfort team for the years of partnership and for putting on this awesome event. Keep an eye out for their Tree for Good Gala in December and the next Hackfort Happy Hour coming up in January. Feel free to stick around if you want to chat with panelists, and otherwise, have a good night. Thanks.
Thanks.